Hello, this is Jacob underscore 114, and today I'm going to be reviewing Invincible Season 3, Episode 6 to continue off my Season 3 series of where I left off, and this episode is pretty decent on its own. To start out, I want to say I kind of want to keep this video short, mainly because I have other stuff I want to cover, and I want to get this over with. Not to say the episode's bad, the episode is good, but this episode doesn't really contribute to the overarching story that Season 3 was going for. But this episode's still decent on its own as a little filler episode, but also really one important scene at the end of this episode that really does contribute to the story. So it's a half and half, but overall I just want to keep this short and simple, as this episode does really only have one message and one theme that has going for that really impacts me and probably impacts many other people around the world. But without further ado, just give the video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want to see me cover the rest of Season 3 and other stuff on the channel that I'm doing too. So that would be pretty cool. And if you want to see me go live, I will be going live pretty much very soon. By the time of November, December, I'll pretty much be going live soon. Anyway, to finally get into the episode, Invincible Season 3 Episode 6 is mainly about the rivalry between Invincible and Powerplex, with Powerplex dealing with the repercussions of what happened in the Battle of Chicago. He is willing to go far as to fake a kidnapping with his wife and put his wife and son in danger, all to get back at Invincible for allegedly killing his niece and sister. But because he was able to pull off that action in the episode, obviously it's clear that this character is mentally not in the right space. And the only reason why he is mentally not right in his brain is because in the big Battle of Chicago in Season 1, Episode 8, it is revealed in this episode that Invincible was sort of responsible for the death of his sister and his niece. Mainly because there was one scene in that episode where Invincible's having to hold a building by his hands, and there's two civilians that are clearly asking for his help, and that they are just on Invincible's hands, literally and mentally. Like, their blood and lives were in Invincible's hands. And unfortunately, in that episode, he does fumble, mainly due to Omni-Man. But obviously, they put that scene there, obviously to add tragedy to the characters, but also for later down the line, including right now in Season 3, show another point of view of whose family that was and how it affects them so much, and how that episode really had an impact, and why the show is really good at its storytelling. But mainly one key factor I think that really affects Powerplex in this episode and the whole entire show is mainly grief, since he watched his own sister and niece fall and immediately just died to Invincible. And because of that, he is, obviously quick to blame Invincible, but not because, that's his emotions. That's just the grief that's really getting to him, that's really poisoning his mind and clearing up his mind. Yes, Invincible is also having a bad point of view in the Battle of Chicago too, but even after that, you can see moments where Invincible reminisces about Battle of Chicago, but he's also pretty much happy, and he's happy with his life even going through that. And yet Powerplex has only gone through the Battle of Chicago, and in between that 1 year time, he is mentally just not been doing well. And it sucks because as a person who goes through grief, I've been seen to notice that grief, even though being like a really major emotion onto a person, it sort of lingers on to you. And there's only two, in my interpret way, there's only two ways that grief really works and how it lingers on to a person. One, it lingers onto them, and it distorts them emotionally and physically, and it just gets really bad to the point where they're not the same person as they were before, or they find a way to work around it and live with it. And so far as they live with it for a whole 2 years, they sort of just find peace within themselves, and eventually they know that's still there, but they still try to cope with it, and just enjoy what's happening in the meantime. They enjoy what they have in the present time instead of what they had in the past. But mainly this grief has distorted Powerplex, and it's what makes him really, really just messed up person in mental state and his power state. But one point I want to make here is kind of a stretch, but I think it still connects on a deeper level, and they probably hit this in the episode. So the way Powerplex's powers work is when you make any physical contact with him, a burst of electricity will come out of his body, and he can unleash that onto you. And so the harder you hit him, the more electricity that he produces, and basically it's kind of opposite situation where if you hit him really hard, he'll hit you really hard back, but shock you in a really bad way. So anyway, so in this episode, when he battles Invincible, he lets Invincible punch him so much, and since Invincible is a Viltrumite, his punches are so strong that whenever Powerplex can't hold it anymore, he unleashes all of it, and eventually it just destroys everything around him. Just like how in life, if you let all that emotional stress and emotional damage just get all into you, eventually there's one point where you're just going to unleash all of that rage and all that emotion you're feeling out into somewhere, and then once you unleash all of that, it kind of destroys your life. Just like how in Invincible, Powerplex did kind of destroy his life after unleashing all of that kinetic energy, and basically it kind of just ruins his life. Even at the end of the episode, it shows that it ruined his life. But that's really one particular moment that really struck to me, and it kind of resembles how real life grief works and how people's emotions actually work, and that's just really cool on what they did in the show. But the end of the episode does really show the effect of this. That a particular moment in the episode really shows how he let all that grief and suffering really affect his life by losing everything that he had going for him. Because before this, he was a normal GDA employee until it was finally time that he couldn't seek out help from no one financially. So he decided to take matters into his own hands and get a villain suit and try to kill Invincible himself. But because of that, then he just, I guess everything was destroyed for him. And pretty much at the end of this episode, he's really not in a good state, as he's locked up in the GDA, and there's no escape for him. And he still is driven by this grief to kill Invincible, and he swears to him at the end of the episode that he'll kill him once he gets out of there. But seeing Powerplex's viewpoint, I'm one to say that Powerplex is not really in the wrong, since he is driven by grief and his emotions to fake a kidnapping of his wife and son just to get back at Invincible and possibly kill him. Since he did watch his sister and niece die right in front of him, he is just letting all that grief really just control his actions and what he does, and it shows how emotions can really get to a person. But another point is that literally he is a good representation of what happens if a person were to let a grief affect their life and make them, go as far as to get back on someone. And it shows that we cannot really let grief really affect us that much, and even though it does still linger on, and it's been lingering to me for 2 years, we cannot let that destroy parts of your life, such as friendships or work life. You cannot let that destroy it, or else really it will go bad for you, just like how in the end of the episode it goes bad for him. But yeah, and another point that makes this role and this representation really, really well is the voice work by Aaron Paul in this episode. Yes, Aaron Paul, the guy who did Jesse and from Breaking Bad and a bunch of other roles. His role as Powerplex was really, really such a standout in this season. Like, I know there's other voice roles that are to come later this season, but this voice role in particular, Aaron Paul as Powerplex, was really a standout, as you can feel the emotion in his voice as he was recording in the studio, recording to his character. It was really, really well done, and it just adds, it amplifies the emotion so much more, and it's what makes this episode really stand out than from the other filler episodes. And overall, that story was pretty good to watch and feel throughout episode 6. And one last thing, it was the way we get to see the aftermath of the Battle of Chicago, because after the Battle of Chicago in episode 8, we didn't really get to see the aftermath as the story kept continuing, but now we finally got to see, what everyone was going through and how everyone is doing even after the Battle of Chicago, even though, it's already been a year though. Everyone's still emotionally everyone's emotionally just sad, just in general because of the incident that happened. Even the Grayson family, I'm driving to the memorial and being there. Even Adam Eve, she was sad too, and that's just how powerful that episode was, season 1, episode 8, and how it still lingers on 2 seasons later in mid-season of a overarching story. But yeah, that's pretty much what this episode is going for, and that's what makes it really good. And one last final scene that this episode includes is the tease for the next episode, which is basically the Invincible War. As I know, I'm already like 7 months late into reviewing the Invincible War, but that post-credit scene where we just see all of Invincible variants is still pretty good to this day. And even though the designs were choppy, it's still, the dialogue in there was still pretty good. And I can't wait to review this next episode, season 3, episode 7, and to finally, hopefully, maybe get a good episode in. I know it's already a good episode, but I know it's going to be really good when I go into depth and explaining it, how good it was, how much of a 10 out of 10 episode that was. But yeah, overall, season 3, episode 6 of Invincible, I'm going to have to give it a 7.5 out of 10, as it was really good. Standout of season 3 with the voice role of Aaron Paul as Powerplex. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. This has been Jacob_114. I'd appreciate you like and subscribe. And I'll see you on the next video. Goodbye.